Chapter 14. The Inner Fire of Transformation. True spiritual change does not begin in rituals, symbols, or belief systems. It begins when awareness turns inward and recognizes its own capacity to transform experience. Hindu mysticism describes this inner force as tapas. It is often translated as heat or fire, but its true meaning is disciplined intensity of consciousness. When attention is sustained without distraction, it generates a subtle pressure that reshapes perception. This inner fire does not attack the world. It burns ignorance, habit, and unconscious reaction. It weakens the patterns that keep the mind bound to repetition. Tapas is not dramatic. It is quiet persistence. Each moment of presence adds fuel to the fire, even when no immediate change is visible. Over time, this inner heat refines awareness. Emotional reactions lose their grip, clarity replaces impulse, and action becomes deliberate rather than automatic. Transformation occurs not through force, but through consistency. Chapter 15. The Science of Mantra and Sound. In Hindu mysticism, sound is not a metaphor. It is structure. Reality itself is understood as vibration, from the most subtle levels of thought to the densest expressions of matter. Mantras operate within this understanding, not as prayers, but as instruments of alignment. When a mantra is repeated, it synchronizes breath, rhythm, and attention. The mind begins to settle into coherence, reducing internal fragmentation. The power of mantra does not depend on belief. It depends on repetition and resonance. Over time, sound reorganizes awareness the way rhythm organizes movement. Eventually, the mantra dissolves. When attention stabilizes, sound gives way to silence. What remains is presence without effort. Chapter 16. The Power of Detachment. Detachment is often mistaken for indifference. Hindu mysticism teaches the opposite. True detachment allows full engagement with life while remaining inwardly free. Action continues, but attachment to outcomes loosens its grip. When the mind clings to results, tension follows. Fear of loss and hope for gain distort perception. Detachment restores balance. This does not mean desire disappears. Desire becomes refined, no longer driven by anxiety or expectation. Detached action is precise, calm, and effective. The mind becomes responsive instead of reactive, allowing life to unfold without inner resistance. Chapter 17. The Witness Consciousness. Behind every sensation, emotion, and thought, there is something that observes. Hindu mysticism calls this the witness. The witness does not interfere. It does not judge. It simply notices. Thoughts arise and pass, emotions shift, sensations change, yet the observer remains unchanged. This unchanging awareness is the ground of experience. When attention rests in the witness, identification weakens. Experience continues, but suffering fades because the mind no longer clings. This recognition does not require withdrawal from life. It occurs in the midst of activity, when awareness remembers itself. Liberation begins the moment consciousness stops mistaking its contents for its identity. Chapter 18. Karma as momentum, not punishment. Karma is often misunderstood as moral judgment. In Hindu mysticism, it is neither reward nor punishment. Karma is momentum. Every thought, word, and action leaves an impression on consciousness. Repeated impressions strengthen tendencies, shaping future perception and behavior. What appears as fate is often accumulated habit. Patterns repeat not because they are destined, but because they have not been interrupted. Awareness interrupts momentum. Conscious choice weakens old patterns and redirects energy. Karma is not destiny. It is direction, and direction can change. Chapter 19. The Illusion of Separation. Separation feels real, yet Hindu mysticism teaches that it is a perception, not a fact. The sense of separation arises when awareness contracts around a personal identity. I and other appear divided, isolated, and opposed. As attention expands, this division softens. The same awareness that observes one mind observes all. Unity is not created, it is recognized. The world you experience is consciousness, encountering itself through form. Chapter 20. Liberation while living. Liberation is not an escape from life, it is clarity within it. The liberated mind participates fully without ownership. Joy and sorrow arise, but neither defines the self. Action flows naturally when identification falls away. There is involvement without attachment, care without anxiety. Freedom is not postponed until death or some future state. It is realized now. Liberation is simply the absence of false identification. Chapter 21. The Discipline of the Mind. The mind is not an enemy, but it is untamed by default. Hindu mysticism begins its practical work here. Left undisciplined, the mind moves from impulse to impulse, driven by habit and reaction. Discipline does not suppress thought. It directs it. Through steady attention, the mind learns to remain present without strain. Focus becomes natural rather than forced. When the mind is disciplined, clarity replaces confusion. Thought becomes a tool instead of a master. Chapter 22. Desire as a path, not an obstacle. Desire is often blamed for suffering, but Hindu mysticism offers a subtler view. Desire itself is not the problem. Unconscious desire is. When desire operates without awareness, it binds the mind to repetition. When illuminated by understanding, desire transforms. It becomes a force for growth rather than attachment. Desire refined through awareness leads inward, not outward. It no longer seeks completion through objects, but through clarity. Chapter 23. The Balance of Effort and Surrender. Spiritual progress requires both effort and surrender. Too much effort creates tension. Too much surrender leads to passivity. Hindu mysticism teaches balance. Effort is applied in practice. Surrender follows in outcome. You act with full presence, then release control. This allows life to respond without resistance. When effort and surrender are balanced, action becomes fluid. The mind works without strain. Chapter 24. Time, Change, and the Eternal. Time governs all change, yet Hindu mysticism points beyond time. Everything that arises changes. Bodies age, thoughts shift, emotions pass. Yet awareness itself remains constant. By observing change without identification, the timeless becomes apparent. You recognize that you are not what changes. Freedom arises not by escaping time, but by seeing through it. Chapter 25. The Silent Intelligence Within. Beneath thought, beneath emotion, there is an intelligence that does not speak in words. This intelligence guides intuition, insight, and spontaneous understanding. It does not argue or explain. When the mind quiets, this silent intelligence becomes evident. Decisions feel clear rather than conflicted. Hindu mysticism teaches that wisdom does not need to be created. It needs to be uncovered. Chapter 26. Living without psychological conflict. Most suffering arises from inner division, wanting and resisting at the same time, hoping and fearing simultaneously. Hindu mysticism resolves this conflict through awareness, not suppression. When attention is whole, inner contradiction fades. Thought, emotion, and action align. Life becomes simpler, not because problems vanish, but because resistance does. Chapter 27. The End of Seeking. The final teaching of Hindu mysticism is deceptively simple. What you are seeking is not elsewhere. It has never been absent. Seeking ends when awareness recognizes itself as complete, not perfected, but whole. When seeking stops, life continues, but it is lived from clarity rather than lack. This is not an ending, it is a return. If you have followed this journey to the end, take a moment to pause. Nothing here was meant to give you something new. It was meant to help you recognize what has always been present. The teachings of Hindu mysticism do not ask for belief. They invite observation, awareness, and direct experience. If this reflection resonated with you, allow it to settle quietly. There is no rush to interpret or explain it. For more long-form explorations into mysticism, philosophy, and ancient wisdom, you're welcome to stay with this channel. Until the next post, remain present and let clarity unfold in its own time.